Over to Europe, where Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof has said that he would step down. This comes several hours after Geert Wilders, leader of the largest government party, had to quit the right-wing coalition. Ministers from Wilders' PVV party will leave the cabinet, while the remaining ministers will continue for now in a caretaker government. The other parties in the coalition now have the option to try and proceed as a minority government, though they are not expected to. Any election will likely not be held before October, and the formation of a new government traditionally tends to take months in the fractured Dutch political landscape. This comes as the hard right is growing in Europe, with anger over migration and the cost of living at the risk of eroding Europe's unity over how to deal with Russia and the US. Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof said that the decision of far-right MP Geert Wilders to withdraw from his party from the cabinet was unnecessary and irresponsible. Dutch Foreign Minister Caspar also called Wilders' decision scandalous. Let's in fact listen in.
Onverantwoord. Er is oorlog in Europa, een paar voeten hier vandaan in Oekraïne. Er is oorlog rond Europa, de landen in het Midden-Oosten. Dus Trump, de tarieven, allemaal heel belangrijke handelsproblemen voor een open economie als Nederland. En op dat moment van tafel weglopen, ik vind het gewoon.
We're now joined by Ross Feingold, political risk analyst who's located in Taipei, Taiwan. Ross, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Ross, this seems to be a pattern going on in Europe, political instability. We've previously seen it in Germany and other countries. What are your thoughts of the current political state of Europe as a whole? Is there some discontent going on?
Certainly. We've seen a lot of governments in Europe not last very long. We've also seen changes from left to right in many recent elections in Europe. And clearly the question of immigration is something that voters genuinely care about, and they're making their thoughts about immigration, inbound immigration into Europe. They're making their thoughts known at the ballot box when there are elections. And then we also have leaders like Geert Wilders, who brings down a government when he feels that the government that he's participating in, that his party is participating in, isn't doing enough on immigration, or is really still too open-minded. I mean, one of his concerns and the reasons why he brought down the government is he felt the government that his party was part of the coalition, he felt they were still too open-minded to inbound immigration. So he decided to walk away.
Yes, and Ross, what are the limitations and responsibilities of a caretaker government? This says when they're not going to host or establish a new government by the next few months at least. What are their limitations and responsibilities that this caretaker government is going to have to look after, and what are the difficulties that they're going to face?
Well, typically the difficulty a caretaker government has is they're not able to pass any significant legislation. That's really the nature of a caretaker government. So I wouldn't expect any significant legislation, whether that's to do with immigration policy or other policies, to occur over the next few months until they have an election. But they are hosting a NATO summit, so it's extraordinarily embarrassing for the Netherlands that their government is basically going to be a caretaker government at a time that they're hosting a NATO summit. And I think that's also why we see the other coalition partners are extremely angry with Wilders, because they're really thinking, like, if there's any time to hold back and at least show some unity, it's when the country is on the international stage. And hosting the NATO summit puts the country on the international stage, but now all the news reports about the upcoming NATO summit in the Netherlands are going to talk about how the government is just a caretaker government. So some of the other parties in the coalition are just extremely angry with his decision.
Ross, given the fragmented Dutch political landscape currently, what challenges and timelines are anticipated in forming a new government following the expected elections in the autumn?
Yeah, that's an important point. The elections are not expected for another 4 months. And then typically the negotiations to form a coalition, because no party, it just looks really unlikely based on recent experience that a single party could form a government on its own, including Wilders' Freedom Party or the PPV. So it's really likely that another coalition will have to be formed, and those negotiations will take many, many months. So it's very likely that there won't be a new Dutch government until the spring or even the summer of 2026.
Ross, one final question. What are the potential economic impacts that could result from this Dutch political crisis, both domestically in the Netherlands and also in the EU?
Well, anytime that there's a caretaker government and political instability that may last, frankly, another 9 to 12 months, it makes investors hesitant to invest in that country. So inbound investment into the Netherlands is probably going to take a hit. And another important issue to keep in mind is one of the most important companies in the semiconductor sector is the Netherlands company called ASML. They produce the equipment that is used to manufacture semiconductors by all the major fabs around the world, including TSMC here in Taiwan. Samsung buys their equipment from ASML and other semiconductor manufacturers as well. Now, the United States under the Trump administration is trying to impose restrictions on the export of ASML's most advanced equipment. And now there's a situation where there's just a caretaker government looking after the interests of Dutch exporters. That's simply not a good situation for the Netherlands economy to be in.
Ross Feingold, thank you very much for joining us. Well, that's all we have time for, and we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.